Hi, everybody. We still have several people that are in the process of joining. We're going to get started in just a minute. Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining today's session. Today, we're going to be discussing high-speed ingest and automated validation of digital file packages through IBM Aspera Faspex 5 and Trend Micro Cloud One file storage security. We'll have a brief introduction here, and then we're going to dive right in to discuss the Trend Micro file storage security solution for anti-malware scanning. We'll then spend a few minutes discussing IBM Aspera Faspex 5. That's the latest version of IBM Aspera Faspex, popular high-speed transfer and collaboration web app. We'll then do a demonstration of the combined solution and have some time at the end for Q&A. If you do have questions as we're walking through the slides and demonstration today, please feel free to enter them into the Q&A feature in the Zoom webinar app. Finally, we are recording today's session. We'll make a link to that recording available to everybody after the fact. Also, if you have colleagues that registered but weren't able to join, we'll have that session available for them as well. Just for brief introductions, this is Jason Warman from PacGenesis. I'm part of the technical team here. I'm a former Aspera and IBM employee. I've been working with the technology for quite a while. Joining me today is Stephen Delaney. He's a senior solutions engineer here at PacGenesis. Like me, Stephen has spent a long time working on the Aspera solutions. He works with a wide variety of our customers in designing and deploying solutions for their file transfer workflows. So a little bit of a brief introduction to PacGenesis, if you're not familiar with us. We are a business partner and software consultancy that works specifically in digital file workflows. Most of our team comes from IBM's Aspera directly. We have a long history of working with the largest customers in the world that use Aspera software. We also work with a number of other partners that fit in well for that sort of end-to-end file collaboration and transfer workflow. One of them, of course, is Trend Micro. We're the leaders in security software and solutions, and we're going to be highlighting one of those integrations between IBM Aspera and Trend Micro here today. We also do work with Erdetto for secure content delivery and watermarking, and have some hardware partnerships for our partners that, or our customers that work with these deployments on-prem. As you may imagine, the challenges of high-speed data transfer are or have become common across many markets. The solutions we're discussing here today have applications in all of these. So we're always happy to help discuss some of the specifics and how we help solve those business problems in different verticals using the tools like the ones that we're talking about here today. But with that, I'd like to introduce the Trend Micro solution that we're going to be discussing today. Now, some of you may be familiar with Trend Micro sort of in general around some of their security products. One of the things that's always been very interesting about Trend is what they bring to the market and to their customers by being the market leader in vulnerability disclosure, specifically through the zero-day initiative, where they have thousands and thousands of independent vulnerability researchers, along with their own large internal teams at Trend Micro, that are constantly looking for and discovering new vulnerabilities in software that's out there. So as you can see, they're by far the market leader in the public disclosure market for many years now. So that the majority of those types of vulnerabilities that are reported come from the zero-day initiative. What this ends up meaning for our customers is that you can be protected much earlier for many of these vulnerabilities, as they sort of work their way through the disclosure process, as vendors remediate them directly in their software. Trend Micro Solutions can often do a virtual patch or otherwise protect you and your workflows from these same vulnerabilities much earlier. Now, that said, what we're going to be focusing on today is one of the offerings inside of Trend Micro Cloud One. Cloud One is a suite of solutions that cover many different aspects, as you can see here, of public and private cloud deployments, hybrid deployments, anything from application security, of course, but protecting your containers and your registries, protecting your deployment overall with conformity rules, or even down to network traffic or workload security on compute instances. But today we're going to be focusing on this one in the upper right, file storage security, and how it relates to our demo environment here today in Amazon AWS S3. Now, Cloud One works in AWS, it works in Microsoft Azure Cloud and the Google Cloud environment. But today we're going to be focusing on AWS and ingesting objects that come in directly to S3 object storage. The basic overview of file storage security is basically all of your new content that is coming in as objects into your cloud storage buckets, your S3 buckets, are automatically scanned using the Trend Micro solution. Now, this sort of builds upon or extends the years and years of Trend Micro's expertise in antivirus and anti-malware scanning, but makes it done in a very cloud native way, as we'll see on the next slide. There's a lot of flexibility here on making sure, of course, that everything is scanned quickly as it comes in, but also on what happens after that scan. In other words, what kind of action we're going to take for files that come through, depending, of course, on whether any malicious content was found. And of course, the integration that we're going to see today is whether or not to release a Faspex package based on the results of that scan. A little bit of detail about the architecture of file storage security. Now, this solution is deployed directly in your customer AWS account. So it's fully deployed for your AWS or Azure or Google Cloud deployment. It runs in your VPC. So your data stays completely under your own control. That data is not, it doesn't have to be sent out, for example, to a Trend Micro or Pack Genesis account. You can see the basic flow as we start with a file or an object that's coming into your S3 bucket. There is a Lambda process, a serverless process that is looking for all new object creates, right? So today, of course, we're going to be uploading data through IBM Aspera, but you can do a native create here, output from another process. You can do a native S3 upload. It doesn't matter how the object gets here, but once it is created new, this listener Lambda is going to pick it up and send it to a queue in SQS. So this queue, of course, makes sure that nothing is missed, but it means we can also scale out very, very easily, right? So if you have a sudden surge, a lot of new objects created all at once, everything's going to be queued up and then sent down here. This Lambda, the scanner Lambda process, is going to pick everything up from the queue and actually do the scan, right? So this is where the magic happens, where they're actually streaming bytes from the object in S3 and inspecting for malware. Now, the results of that scan are then published to an SNS topic. And here's where that flexibility comes in, right? So, by default, it's going to add a number of tags to the object so that we can see at any time just by inspecting the object what time it was scanned, what the basic results were, whether it was scanned at all, so that the object has some information or metadata on it itself. But we can also plug into this SNS topic and take some customized post scan actions. Right? There's a library of post scan actions that are available from Trend Micro, or of course you can subscribe to this topic on your own and do the rest of your automated workflow, so that you know that nothing is progressing in your workflow until that scan has occurred. Okay, so very cloud native way of doing anti-malware scanning. It's not one of these solutions that uses the giant EC2 instances that are running all the time that have scanner engines on them. It's been purpose built to be scalable, to be lightweight, and to be deployed completely within your environment, to make sure that we have the maximum flexibility. All right, let's move along to the next half of this, which is the IBM Aspera solution. Now, in particular, we're talking about Aspera Faspex and Aspera Faspex 5. Now, for those of you that may need a quick refresher on this, there's a couple of different aspects to an Aspera deployment. There is your HSTS node. This is the high-speed transfer layer here in the middle, which can be either self-managed, or this can be a SaaS layer sitting in front of your object storage. Or if this is on-prem, these can be your own high-speed transfer nodes in front of SAN or NAS. And then on top, there's a number of options for how users interact with Aspera. In self-managed environments, this is typically shares or Faspex, as we're looking at today. There's also the option of Aspera on Cloud, which is a SaaS web application layer as well. But yeah, what we're focusing on today is Faspex, this middle box in the top. This is one of the most widely deployed applications in the Aspera suite. It's very easy to use, user to user or user to group package sending and receiving workflow. Now, what has changed semi-recently in the last year or so is a brand new version, IBM Aspera Faspex 5. Now, this is the same basic concept as far as sending and receiving digital packages, but it's been built from the ground up, right? So brand new user interface. It's much more modern, looks a lot like Aspera on Cloud for folks that have used that user interface. And the backend has also been updated as well, right? So it is completely containerized, comes as a set of Docker containers that you can deploy on your own virtual machines or hardware. And of course, we've been working directly with many of our customers to do these upgrades and migrations to Faspex 5, because the older version, Faspex 4, is going end of support in September this year. So if we haven't talked to you yet, we'd love to talk to you. We've been trying to reach out to everybody to make sure that you're in a good position to get to this latest Faspex version 5 before the end of support of the previous. All right. Now, with that, I'd like to turn it over to Stephen Delaney. Stephen can walk through this little diagram of what we're going to be showing today in the demonstration, and then he'd like to give a demo of the software itself and the integrated solution between all of these components. Stephen, it's all yours.
Thanks, Jason. Hey everyone, Stephen here. As Jason mentioned, we will review this file validation workflow integrating Trend Micro's AV scanning with Faspex 5, then head into a demo and take a look at the user experience. We have a few components here. Faspex 5 is our web application that the end users will interact with directly. If a user kicks off a transfer from their browser, it'll interface with the Aspera Connect application locally on their system and trigger a transfer using Aspera's FASP protocol. The files will land on whatever storage is predefined for the HSTS or transfer server. In the case of our demo, they're going to land in an S3 bucket. Within that S3 bucket, as soon as the files land, Trend Micro is scanning that bucket and will tag the content based on what it finds, whether it finds malicious content or clean content. We'll know about it based on the tag that was set. As the files land, the transfer server is also adding those files to a queue to be validated by Aspera's validator. So the validator will check that queue and then check against the S3 tags to validate whether any malicious content was found. And if malicious content was found, it'll let Faspex 5 know through the API that the package should be held, and Faspex 5 will then hold that package from the end user and not allow downloading of the content. Whereas if everything comes back clean, then it'll also let Faspex 5 know, and Faspex will allow the user to download the content and send out a notification to that user. And with that, we'll switch over to the demo and take a look at the Faspex 5 UI. And it's been revamped a bit from Faspex 4 for those who are familiar. One thing we'll take a look at is this app switcher on the top right to see the two applications that Faspex 5 has. One is the packages application. This is where the users live and can send and receive content. For those who are not familiar with Faspex, Faspex is very similar to an email-like experience where I have an inbox here of all the content that I've received. I can send out what is similar to an email, provide a message, as well as attach some files to send off to an end user. The admin application is, as you'd expect, for admins to take a deeper dive into the system function or add users or modify a configuration. So to start, we'll send a transfer, a package with some clean content. So I'll add just a single image file here and send that off to a recipient on this system. And as we send this file, it's landing in that S3 bucket. Trend Micro is scanning the content to validate whether there's any malware included. And as long as the content comes back clean, the package would be received by the end user. So I'm looking at it here in my sent folder, and I can drill in and take a look at what was sent and any information about this package. So as the validator then checks the tags on the back end, as soon as the tag shows up, it'll change to complete, and the end user will receive that content. And there it changed to completed. And so now the notification will go out to that user. Instead, if we send a larger test, we'll send it to the same user, we'll send a large set of files. And in this case, I'm going to send a number of image files. There's a movie file in here, some metadata as well. But you'll see this image 5 happens to be a malware file. And so I'll send these off to the recipient. It's going to perform a transfer using Aspera's FASP protocol. And once the content lands in the bucket, it'll be scanned. And here's where we'll switch over to that admin application within Faspex. So on the admin side, we can see the admin dashboard and a little bit of information about the system itself, including a file processing queue. And we can see that there's 27 files being processed from that package and some information about it. If we drill in, we get a graph to just visualize that information about how many files are processing, how many were successful. And in this case, we see one has already failed. which suggests that malware was found. And if we head back over to the packages application, as soon as any file is found to be malicious, this status will change to file processing failed, and the content will not be received by the end user. So we can see the file processing failed, and if we drill in and take a look at the activity, we can actually see why. So here we note that the tag showed as malicious, and what file specifically was found to be malicious, so that you can take some action on that content if needed. So now we'll switch over to Trend Micro, which has a web portal for their Cloud One solution. This acts as a central point for configuring and monitoring everything in your Trend deployment. If we open up the file storage security, this is where we can configure any buckets, whether it's AWS, Azure, GCP, to monitor, and we can add a bucket or add some post-scan action if needed. So we can see here, these are the buckets, including the one for this Faspex 5 demo that are being scanned. If we switch over to the scan activity, we can see a recent history of scans that have occurred within file storage security. And we see that one file was tagged as malicious and the rest were tagged with no issues found. And we also get a history of all the malicious events here, and can take a look at the malware specifically that was found, some information about it, and maybe make a decision on if there's some remediation that needs to be taken based on the information we find here. And if we switch over to AWS, we'll see in this Faspex package folder, we'll have that test package that I had sent, and we can take a look at all the files here that are sitting in the S3 bucket after the transfer completed. And if we look at image 1, we'll see this FFS scan result was tagged with no issues found as expected. It's just a standard image. In comparison to image 5, if we look at that same tag, we'll see FFS scan result shows as malicious. From the end user's perspective, they'll receive email notifications based on whether the package went through or not. So here they can drill in and download the package, or in the second case, they'll receive an email saying that the package failed its file processing, and maybe to request that content again, though the sender will also receive a notification about the failure. These emails are customizable, and who gets notified of what is also configurable within Faspex 5.
Cool. Thanks so much for that demo, Stephen. I hope that was useful for everybody. We did want to make sure that we save some time here at the end for some Q&A. We have a few that have been submitted already, so we'll go through those now. If anybody else has a question that hasn't been addressed yet, or that you haven't put into the Q&A section in the Zoom app, please go ahead and put that in now. Let's start with the first one. I think this is just sort of a more basic question about what Faspex is. Is it a client-facing browser app to transfer data and get the data scanned? That's exactly right. So Faspex is a web application that customers can deploy that uses the Aspera fast protocol on the back end, so that users can do high-speed uploads and downloads to either object storage or on-prem storage, depending on how you have it configured. And then what we've shown today here is an integration with Trend Micro's antivirus, anti-malware scanning engine, file storage security. So these two things can sort of work together to kind of help that sort of end-to-end workflow. And maybe one of the other questions here that's sort of related: will the file check be executed for both downloads and uploads? The files are scanned upon upload to the object storage, and one of the keys really is that, as you saw in Stephen's demonstration, users are not able to download that package until that validation occurs, right? So you can be sure that that any malicious content is not being spread, is not being downloaded by other users, because it's not made available until after that validation. Another question here, does Validator support HA deployments? Now, this is a good question because I know Aspera is a very important part of a lot of our customers' workflows. So they build in the Aspera components in a sort of HA way. Stephen, can you address Validator being run in that same kind of way?
Yeah, so Validator can itself be deployed in an HA configuration, and supports also HSTS being deployed in a HA configuration. So on both sides of it, whether it's Validator actually triggering that to check against the HSTS, or just waiting for the queue, it supports it on either side.
Excellent, very good. Let's see, got another question here. What happens if the transfer fails and resumes later? Stephen, could you address that one?
Right. So if that happens, there's two settings within Faspex for when this check happens. It's either a file timeout or a package timeout. So individually scanning single files or scanning the entire package. So as long as the time frame is within whatever timeout value is set, then it's going to wait and try to run that scan again until it is successful or receives a valid result. But if it's expected that there's going to be many pauses or intermittent connectivity issues, then that timeout value could be increased on both the package and file level to make sure that it's scanned and not just indefinitely held. If it eventually times out, then the package will be in that timed out state until remedied.
Yep, got it. Makes sense. We've got a couple of questions here about working with other Aspera products. Aspera on cloud. There's also high-speed transfer endpoint, used to be called point-to-point, desktop client, all of this, and sort of integration sort of across the board. So right now, the demonstration that we showed today with Faspex 5 is specific to Faspex in that the package validation with blocking is specific to Faspex. Now we do have customers that have deployed the Trend Micro scanning solution with Aspera on cloud with just about all of the other Aspera software, and it works really well. But the specific part around blocking the packages is something that's built into this version of Faspex that we're showing today. We have been trying to engage with all of the teams involved here to see what's possible to get a sort of a deeper integration. Stephen showed the Trend Micro Cloud One dashboard where you can see details, for example, about any scanned failures or any malicious content that would be found. We're trying to get some feedback from our customers on what would make most sense there, and also, of course, what's actually possible to make happen in an integrated way between the various software components here. Okay, additional question here, Stephen, maybe this one for you. What options do you have for how to implement Validator?
Yeah, so Validator uses Lua scripting. So you can write any Lua script that you want, but you can also piece that together with other languages if you want. In this case, we combined both Python and Lua in order to achieve this, and have Lua pass off some request to a Python script that checks the S3 bucket. But it's pretty configurable. So just depends what you want to dream up and script within Lua.
Sounds good. I've got another question here about, well, is this a feature available right now? So the version of Faspex 5 that we're showing, this is a pre-release version that specifically has this blocking option, but it is very close. We've been told by engineering and the product folks that this will be coming out very shortly here. There is a GA version for those of you that haven't switched to Faspex 5 already. The GA version, I believe, is 5.0.5. It's been running very well. I got another comment in the Q&A section here that they love the new Faspex 5 look. And, we agree that the look and feel is, I think, really great. It's a good experience for end users. But yeah, this specific feature that we're showing is going to be out in an upcoming release here. Another question, does this work with the self-managed HSTS, that's the high-speed transfer server, or does it have to be the SaaS version? Stephen, would you mind addressing that?
Yeah, in this case, we used it with a on-prem or self-managed HSTS server, so it would support that.
Sounds good. And sorry, I know we're running out of time here, but one more question. What's the price, right? So of course, that's always the question. For Faspex and the Aspera side of the solution, the validator piece and Faspex 5 are covered by your existing Aspera Enterprise subscription, so there's no additional licensing required there. On the Trend Micro side, file storage security generally is it's priced based on the number of buckets that we're going to be scanning in your environment. So whether, and again, this is across either AWS S3 buckets, Azure Blob Storage, or Google Object Storage. The general pricing is per year based on that number of buckets. So there's no restriction on the number of users involved or the number of files or objects involved here. It's really just how many of those buckets we're going to be scanning. Okay, I know we've gone through a lot quickly here today. We'll be available to follow up on some of these details with everybody. As I mentioned, we are going to send a copy of this recording out to everyone, and we'd love to follow up with some more in-depth conversations, either about making sure that everybody is set up to transition to Faspex 5 for those of you that are running the older versions. And to also take a look at the Trend Micro file storage security option. It's very quick and simple to do a POC of this in your environment to set up and get running. It comes as a set of CloudFormation templates, for example, in AWS, so you can get this up and running in no time at all. If you do have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us, sales@pacgenesis.com. And as I said, we'll be sending a copy of the recording today out as a link for you and any of your colleagues that weren't able to make it today. Thanks again for joining, everybody. Thank you to Stephen Delaney for joining me and presenting to everyone. Have a good day, and that'll conclude today's webinar. Thanks.